morning. All right. This is going to be a fun exploration into some brain energy. And I hope that you learn some fun new stuff. So let me begin by drawing out, this is going to be a short course in, I guess you could say a short course in appreciation. But essentially, it's really about maximizing brain power and brain energy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some time just for a moment, just to draw out some kind of like underlying things that are happening inside the brain and the body, just for you to have some really kind of basic, but yet they're kind of advanced concepts when it comes to the brain and the nervous system. And then we'll go into practices and strategies that you could use to up-level the brain energy and energy within your system in general. So let me just start by, talking about and writing out and drawing out the main character of this particular talk, which is called your brain. And your brain has kind of like a couple generalized areas. It's got this thing called a cortical area, and it has a subcortical area, which would be, let's say, down here. Sometimes people like to think of it as your unconscious world. So subcortical, below. Okay, so then in the subcortical area, there's kind of three main areas that I want you to just consider. There's a thing called your cerebellum, and that's like it's like the battery of the brain. It takes information from the body and relays it throughout the brain. Then your thalamus, which is the relay center. And then there's a thing called the amygdala. And believe me, there's many other attachments in here, but just to give you a little bit of frame. Now, the amygdala in the personal development world, spirituality world, health world, the amygdala is your stress and anxiety center. So that gets a lot of attention, I guess you could say. But this subcortical area is kind of, you'd think of as our animal or mammal brain. And then we have this beautiful little setup thing called the spinal cord, which is the reptilian part of us, which is based on reflexes and pushing information up towards the brain, so then it can figure out exactly how it needs to disperse through. Okay, now a couple cool little facts to know. Now, information that comes in from your environment, and that's not my hand, I'm actually making squiggly lines. The information coming in relays itself through the body to go up to the brain for our systems to figure out what to do. Now, this is called monosynaptic. It's a monosynaptic reflex. And the monosynaptic reflex, just like if you go to the doctor's office and they take out their little knee hammer and reflex hammer and they hammer your knee and it reflexes, that's what happens in the body. So when we receive information from the environment, basically it's monosynaptic. It basically is a black or white phenomenon that runs energy up, and it's interpreted in the amygdala as either positive or negative. And so the amygdala is a structure in the brain that's called, it gives it a valence, which is a charge. It gives the information valence of a positive or a negative charge. So this is happening in the amygdala constantly because it's looking out for whether something is supportive or challenging, whether it's threatening to your life or supportive to your life. So this information comes up, black or white information drives quickly up to areas of the subcortical brain that basically assess whether this thing is a threat or not. So one thing that people don't necessarily consider, though, is that I'm drawing a squiggly line through your spinal cord, which is part of your body, is that defense posture, defensiveness, tension in the system is a predictor of whether the information going up to this brain is going to be perceived in a positive or a negative light. If you have very little tension in the system, the information, let's use this as an example. If you have little tension in your system, the information is going to be more accurate to what life is actually presenting to us. But if you are preloaded with a ton of tension, it is going to be less accurate and more biased if you're preloaded with tension. And it's going to be biased to defense, and it's going to be biased towards protection. And it's also going to be biased towards perceiving something's negative, inherently negative in your environment, because the information coming in is being filtered through the tension here. So it is inaccurate or less than accurate as it comes into the brain to be interpreted. Now, the reason that this is important is because this all happens 500 milliseconds before your conscious cortical brain gets a hold of it. So just get that. I want you to kind of sit with that for a second. The information coming in from life could be a person, a circumstance, a situation, could be cars driving by. If you have defense patterns and defense tension in here, and this information's coming in and it's interpreted 500 milliseconds before the conscious brain gets a hold of it, then that essentially means that you are a slave in part to the tensions of the body, because this predicts how the brain is going to interpret the information. Okay, not you, not as an individual conscious you, but the body, the preloaded setup. So doing body work, doing breath work is essential because it frees up more and more of the energy and the tension that gets stored in the subcortical system. Okay, now, that being said, this amygdala assigns whether something's positive or negative, whether it's supportive or challenging. And the defenses and the tensions along here that are preloaded in your system that give information to your brain 500 milliseconds before the cortical area gets a hold of it is the predictor of how you're interpreting your life and your environment. Now, the cortical area, way up here, is called polysynaptic. And polysynaptic means many synapses, many connections, and it's more complex. So the information that ends up getting to your cortical area, the information up here, the reason everything doesn't get to your cortical area is because if it did, your cortex would be overloaded. It would like literally blow up. It would be exhausted. So your subconscious, your subcortical area through here takes care of the majority of the decisions in life. So it helps you to stay alive and to survive. The cortical area now, really what that does is it's polysynaptic in nature, and now it takes on and is able to take on more complex information. So this is where in the cortical area, we look to have reflective awareness. This is where reflective awareness sorts through the shit of life, but we do it in a reflective way. Whereas if you see over here, this is living life in a reflexive way, but we need to integrate these two to have reflexive awareness. The really cool part about doing work in a reflective awareness way is that the more order that we bring to our defenses, then it loops back around and influences the overall tension in the system. So you use reflective awareness to influence the reflexes. Then again, you're still going to keep your reflexes going, but you may have, imagine, let's say you have 80% tension in the body. Then through breath work, body work, reflective awareness work, you now are down to 60% of tension. And then you keep this cycle going, doing reflective work and working in the body, and you're down to 40% tension in the system, et cetera, et cetera. Now, each time you go down in tension and you have greater capacity to breathe and to move and ultimately to think, that means the way that you're interpreting, imagine the way the information's coming in. Just imagine for a second. Someone walks by you with a certain tone on their face, and you're preloaded with a ton of tension. Instantly, you're in a threat mode, okay? If you come with 40% tension versus 80%, same person walks by, preloaded with a nasty kind of look on their face, but you're only preloaded with 40% tension. The way you process that individual is completely different. You're not throwing up your defenses right away. In fact, most oftentimes what you would be doing, instead of being reflexively defensive, you'll probably be reflexively curious as to, like, I wonder what their problem is. I wonder what's going on. Versus, oh my God, are they a threat? Are they going to kill me? What's going to happen? So these are the things that occur when you're preloaded with a ton of tension. You're looking, your system's hyper vigilant towards stress and defense, and more things become a threat and you're defensive around because you're holding that in your subcortical system. So the goal really is to work both the reflexive and the reflective pieces of our system to give us kind of an optimal capacity for power, for brain energy. Now, the stuff that's stored in here in the body, you can see my arrow, the stuff that's stored in here is stored energy. Tension is stored energy. Tension is stored energy. And the stuff that hasn't been worked out and sorted through in life, different circumstances, events, traumas, etc., just continues to store as energy. It doesn't mean it's bad. It doesn't mean it's good. It just means it's stored energy. And which also means that within this stored energy, there's opportunity. And there's opportunity for what? Opportunity to liberate the energy. Well, to do what? To do work, to organize your brain, to give your brain energy, to give your body energy. So within the stored trauma, within the stored circumstances, within the stuff that hasn't been made sense of yet, it's stored energy. That stored energy on a reflexive day-to-day capacity is limiting because it keeps defenses high. Every time you go through, though, and liberate more energy, either through body work, breath work, or reflective awareness work, every time you do that cycle and move through it, you're liberating stored possible energy and recycling it through your brain and body, okay? So how do we add reflective awareness? Well, again, we have a program, Breathe with Dr. Steve. So if you ever want to come on that works on the reflexive monosynaptic energy that's available in our body of things that haven't been worked through. The other option is doing reflective awareness work. And I'm just going to clear enough little space here. Okay. This is why also, just to give you a little hint, why journaling and writing is important, because it takes things like this big whiteboard, takes things that are in your brain disordered and actually allows you to put it on paper to organize it. Okay, so that being said, that was a little bit of a digress. 3 things that we focus on in reflective awareness. Okay, how do we free up energy? How do we free up energy for the brain? 1, take a person in your life. Take a person in your life that you value, that they are very, very helpful or have been helpful in your life. So just take person, we'll call them person A. And this person A has been extremely helpful in your life. Okay, now, what we want to do is we want to find, now this is non-defensive work, this is reflective work. And I'll just tie this in at the end, but I want to give you the exercises first. Person A, that's been helpful or influential in your life in a net positive way. And I want you to go in and just identify that person. The first exercise is to find 20 ways in which I was of value to them. 20 ways that I was of value. Now, what does this do? Well, in your body, this person is reflexive in your nature, monoreflexive, that they're way more positive than negative. Okay, now, well, what does that mean? Every time that you think about that person or look at that person, you value them more than you. Generally speaking, you could say, well, no, that's not true. And I would just say, you want to prove it then. This is a prove it exercise right here, that you want to be as equal value to them as they are to you. That pulls any stored energy about them, and it liberates the energy so that you can see value in yourself. And it's a self-appreciation exercise. Self-appreciation liberates energy, liberates any polarity. Now, remember, I said the amygdala. Remember, the amygdala labels something positive and negative. So if we have someone in our life that we label really, really positive, okay, then we're already reflexively postured that person as a net positive. But in the net positive world, which most people don't understand, is if there's a net positive on somebody, which seems like, this sounds like a bit counterintuitive, but when there's a net positive on someone, there is a net negative on you, meaning that we actually have lowered self-worth and value relative to them. Again, that sounds counterintuitive because we're like, well, why wouldn't we be positive? Why wouldn't we want to think positive about people in our life? Well, we do. And we want to add to that story. We don't want to just see them as positive, but we also want to see how we positively influence their life, because we want to be level-headed about them, not blind. And oftentimes when people do good things for us, what we would decide as good things, we lose ourselves in that. And this is an opportunity to up your self-worth and appreciation, which automatically ignites more brain energy. So what I'm saying is that there's people in our life that we've labeled helpful and influential in a net positive direction. What we're asking is just to identify 20 ways in which you've been equally of value to them. It increases your self-awareness, reflective awareness of your own worth, and that helps to promote more brain energy, because it actually helps to lengthen the spine and feel more like a sense of self, and you didn't lose yourself relative to them. So this is a way to up your self-value, worth, and energy in the brain. Second exercise. Now you got to do these. You don't have to believe me. Just do them. You'll feel different. I want you to name, the second exercise is to name 10 people in your life. Just people, just general people in your life. And figure out and just write down the way that they're supporting you in your life. And I would write 3 things for each person: how they bring value to you. How do they bring value to me? Now, why would I do that? Because in the world of the body, it's looking for threat generally. And so it can very easily assign a negative label to many things reflexively, and we naturally build tension in our bodies because the tension in our bodies is built as protective mechanism. So you're naturally, every day you wake up, you're naturally building tension in your system because your system's interpreting what could possibly be of threat. And so, and not only that, you're dealing with maybe tensions that weren't dealt with the previous day or the previous week or the previous month or the previous year. So what we do with this exercise is we are reiterating to our nervous systems and our body and our brain that we have equal amounts of support than we do challenge in our life. And what that does is it pulls energy to the polysynaptic areas. All this stuff here, first and second ones, is designed to push energy to the cortical area. And the cortical area, the polysynaptic area, is the area of the brain for strategic planning and intuitive insights. So we're pushing energy there is what we're doing by asking and using reflective awareness, because we're using that part of the brain. So we're working it. We're working the cortical centers of the brain. to overcome the inertia, to overcome the habit, to overcome the biases of the body and the subcortical area. Okay, I'm going to say that again because that's really in a nutshell what we're doing. By using reflective awareness types of questions, we're overcoming the inertia, the habit, and the bias that gets developed day to day from the subcortical regions of the brain and the body. Okay. So, third question that we ask is looking at situations that were harmful or hurtful. And what we do is we find, if we pick a decent one that has a lot of negative emotional charge to it, we look at it and we ask, what are 50 ways that it was valuable to me? Just did this with a gal yesterday. She had quite the trauma at work during COVID for a year and a half. They dragged her through the mud. If you want to pick imagery, it's like she was kind of tied to the back of a car and they put it on full speed and she was being dragged behind, really dragged through the mud. And so we had to go in and find ways, because she was open to it and she trusted me, that we had to find ways in which that actually helped her to grow and push her into a more authentic life, more valuable life. What we found is that she was so attached to that particular position at work that she would never let it go on her own. And she wasn't being valued in the position, and she was being underpaid, and she wasn't getting to spend time with her kids, and she was cranking out exhaustive 12-hour days, and da-da-da-da-da. And so there was many ways in which that job was being very, very destructive to her. And she was like losing her way. And so we start to reveal like just how valuable all these dragging through the mud situations were, because essentially it was pushing her out of the door so that she could move along with her life and reconnect with her kids, reconnect with her energy, build her health back up. She got a new job with new higher pay. So like there was a whole bunch of things that have transformed, but she was still resentful at how it was done, why it was done, and she couldn't make sense of it. And so we made sense of it. And so 50 ways in which this hurtful, harmful situation was valuable. Then what we ask is, which I asked her, is what would be the drawbacks if that situation never occurred? So for her, it was like, well, what would happen if that never occurred and they just, let's say, fired you without dragging you through the mud? Well, she saw all the ways that there would be drawbacks to her and negatives to her if she was still in the same situation. So if this thing never occurred, okay, first you want to find out, well, how did this actually develop my character? How did it improve the quality of my life? This is reflective now. How did it improve the quality of my life? And you're looking for net positives on that. Then once you see, oh my God, I wouldn't be who I am today without this, then the next step to kind of letting that go would be, well, what would be the drawbacks to me if that never happened in the first place? What are the drawbacks if that never happened? What are the drawbacks if that never happened? What if that never happened? So then we look at the drawbacks of that and the negatives if it never happened. So this step 3 is a little more kind of complex. Maybe you need a little bit of supervision for that. But I wanted to give you the tools that I use for myself and for other people. This one, number 1 and number 2, is super easy to grab energy for. Notice people that do things for you. Reflect back on 20 ways that I'm valuable to them. Okay, I had actually somebody do this in my practice, and they were kind of infatuated with what we did for them. And I just didn't like that degree of imbalance. So I said, okay, let's sit down and find 20 ways which you were valuable to me. And it was hilarious. We had a hilarious laugh over it. but she realized of the value that she brought to me equal to the value that I brought to her. So she lost that big charge and the infatuation with me and with the tools that we bring, because she got to recognize the value that she brought to me and to my work, etc. And being a student, you're bringing value. Like right now, if you're on, you're bringing value to me by having, just by being here. And your value, just your presence is of value. But so oftentimes we don't recognize that our presence in and of itself is value. Okay, I'll give you another example, very simple example. I was being a little lethargic. How does this tie into brain energy? I was being a little lethargic at the gym the other day, and I was just kind of demotivated on it. And so I looked around, and first I looked around the people in the gym, and I said, what value are you bringing to me right now? And I started to magnify my environment to see the value that they were bringing to me. And I was like, oh, cool. And I'm like, well, what value am I bringing to them by being here and showing up? Oh, wow. I'm maybe motivating them, or I'm keeping them. And I was doing kind of the same thing that they were doing, is that we were all kind of unconsciously holding each other accountable. But the same faces in that gym, we're kind of holding each other and being consistent and holding accountability. And it just freed up all this energy, and it just inspired me to continue on my way, and it liberated energy in my brain. So these things they're very simple. Reflective awareness is not that difficult. You just need to know the questions to ask. So figure out somebody in your life that you admire, that have been helpful or influential, and go and find ways that you've been helpful and influential to them. You will uptick your brain energy on that. Second thing, name 10 people and how they are supporting you, valuable to you, 3 ways each. That will up-level your brain energy, because your system will inherently feel safer in its environment. So it'll free up stored defenses. The third is go find where the shit of life happened. Go find 50 ways that it was valuable. And that will up your brain energy as well. Because anything that you can find of value automatically equals energy. And that's called, in the energy world, neg entropy. And if you devalue something, you lose energy, and it's called entropy. It's a breakdown. So entropy is a breakdown through devaluing. Neg entropy is an energetic process through valuing something. Every time you value, you change the reflexive nature in the body. Anytime you devalue something, you re-ingrain, rehabituate defensive energy and tension in the body. Okay? That's the rules. That's the rules. So this was a lot to think about, to consider, but you have your exercises. So just go and prove it to yourself. Free up your brain energy, free up the energy in the body, change the reflexive nature of you, and you will continue to be on your way and to evolve yourself. And as I say, I was just summarizing some of the work that I was doing with someone, and say, a big part of the work that we do together is just updating yourself to life, updating yourself to you. It's continuously updating yourself, because so much gets stored, and we don't reflectively take reflective awareness on what's happening in life, the inventory of life. These are 3 ways that you can begin to do that. So thank you so much for being here, and have a beautiful day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you for being here, and have a great day.